Well, thank you for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and hopefully answer some questions. My history before becoming mayor was working with small business in advertising and marketing, and also large corporate businesses and video production. And so I have a real heart for business and entrepreneurs and seeing them be successful. I have been in office for 5.5 years, and I did get 6 years with my first term because we hit a population threshold over 50,000, and they want to have mayors of large cities on the same presidential election cycle. So that's why I'm up this year, and that's how I got 6 years in my first term. In 2019, when I came into office in May of 2019 is when the Walmart announced their new headquarters. And so we were immediately went to work with those teams from just a combining with the planning department and working with them on that process, but also really analyzing our systems and starting to plan for more growth than what we had traditionally seen. So our growth projections now are in that 5 to 6%. Where in 2019 we were looking more at like 3% growth. And so that changes pretty much everything that you do in the city of how you have to think about things and how you have to think about your infrastructure and your long-term capital improvement projects. And then we went through that process. We wanted to come to the public with a bond extension because in a fiscally sound municipal city, one of the ways to get funding and also in this instance, not pass along more taxes to the public is to do a bond extension. And so we were in the process in 2019 of putting together all the projects that we wanted to bring to the public and ask them to help us fund with the bond extension. And then 2020 hit and the pandemic hit. So we had to convert and be able to shut down some of our facilities. But for the most part, I say the city really we're your first contact on usually your worst day. So all of our services had to stay in play, whether it was water or sewer or electric. We had to make sure you were still getting all those services through the pandemic, or police and fire. We run our own ambulance service here in the city of Bentonville. So we were literally going into homes in the middle of COVID and trying to navigate new information on a daily basis to be able to do that and continue to serve our residents. We have a library and a community center, and through that time we learned how to close it down and then reopen it to the public. So we made it through 2020, and then in 2021 we went to the public. During that process of 2020, the campus was still going full. Really all of our city continued to grow, and so our planning department and everyone else in the city continued to be here and serve the public. But in 2021, when we went to the public for the bond extension, all of our bond projects did pass. And when you do a bond extension or to the public, you have to, it's categorized by projects. And so we had a fire training facility, we had a police training facility in there, we had the library expansion project in there, we had drainage. First time really the city had really took time to analyze our systems, and in particular we were looking at drainage in downtown. And so we knew that we had to get some projects in the ground with the growth, and so we took that drainage as a project. And then oftentimes your municipal bonds are what help you fund your roads. And so a big portion of the bond extension was 166 million in transportation or roads. And so through that process, we worked with our Chamber of Commerce and our different organizations in town to make sure that we had a very transparent, open process to the public to make sure they knew what the vote was for. We did get all of those passed by more than 70%. Most of them were in the 75 to 85% passage. So once that was done, we were able to go to design with all of our projects. And that typically, depending on the project, because these are all going to be large projects, can be, you might be a year in design. And so we moved through that process. And then in the last couple of years, you've seen us really put those projects into play. So you can go to bentonvillebond.com and you can read about all of our projects and where, if they're in completion stage or in design stage, or the different aspects of the project, exactly what the road projects look like, and how they'll be introduced to the public. We we've been very busy over the last few years with infrastructure, and not only do we have city projects here, we have a lot of development projects here. So I know traffic is a concern and road closures can be a concern for the public. And we are strategically actually drawing down our bond money so that we've got street projects really in each of our 4 wards going on right now. We try to do that in a manner so we can keep east-west and north-south traffic flowing. So that's a little bit of the history of some of where we've been and where we're going here in the city. And we also have really dove into understanding our assets, and water and sewer is one of those assets as we've seen the growth, the capacity and different things in our systems. And we've also went back and been able to analyze those systems so we can tell areas where we have pipe in the ground in the years from 03 to 07 and the footing around it was not correctly done. So we have some issues there that we have to actually go back and address now with the public. And so we've got pilot programs running through that. So we're addressing our old infrastructure as well as putting the new infrastructure in the ground with our capital improvement projects. So we've been really busy here in the city of Bentonville. And some of the other projects, the library expansion. So I'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about business resources and everything that's available there. But we're actually doing a ribbon cutting this evening for the library expansion. So we would love for you to join us there. Some of the other big projects from a city standpoint would be our training facility. So we did a clean burn training facility for our fire department. They used to have a house donated to them, and then we had to go through all of the environmental checks to be able to do the burn in the house. And then usually the mayor's office got the calls when the public saw the smoke, and we had to answer those questions. So we produced that facility for them. We also produced a training facility and shooting range and virtual training facility for our police department. I say one of the #1 concerns for the mayor, and I really feel like probably you'll get agreement from most of the mayors across the US is safety in your city. And so we support our police and fire, and training is a big part of that. And then our road project. So we just did a ribbon cutting on, that's a project that actually had state, federal, and private funding in it. I think the conversations around it started in 05. And so now you're actually seeing that project be developed, and we're actually on the road using it now. I think it's went through maybe 3 or 4 designs. And one of the design elements you see now in our roads is that we're really thinking about multimodal transportation. And so that 8th Street project is a really good example of having a protected side paths for bikes. And
And
pedestrian
Mary,
sidewalk.
we'll get to those. I promise we'll get to all of that. I just
Okay.
wanted to kind of get to the question. But thank you so much for sharing about your campaign and what all has been done under your watch. I did not know that 4 to 6 year piece, and I was kind of talking to someone, and they were like, "Huh, 4 years and 2 years, and this doesn't make sense in terms of election." So now I know that's good to know. And I didn't know. I just saw somewhere that U.S. was growing at 2.8% this month. So Bentonville at 5-6% is pretty awesome. So kudos on that.
All right, so as far as a little bit about me, my wife and I moved here to Bentonville in 1996, so we've been here about 28 years. I've been married to my wife, Susie, for 31 years. We have 2 children. Stephanie's 28 and Sam is 23. I've spent the last 38 years as a business leader and the last 27 years as a Walmart team leader, working for such companies as 3M, Del Monte Foods, Timex, and Bissell Home Care. I have a master's of business administration from George Washington University, with education focused on decision making and negotiating and years of leadership training. I also have an honorary degree for community service from NWAC, and I've spent decades in nonprofit leadership working with the Mercy Foundation, NWAC, Best Friends, the Bentonville Library Foundation, and many others. I am also the only candidate endorsed by 2 former Bentonville mayors, Bob McCaslin and Terry Coberly. And if you would like to look into my background, I welcome you to look at my profile on LinkedIn that has a lot more detail that I didn't get into today. I guess I could continue.
Yeah, no, sorry. You have 5 minutes for this if you want to take all of it, or I can get into the questions if you.
I'll just finish up. I mean, I don't need to go on for 5 minutes, but I can tell you the reason why I'm running for mayor is I was approached in January by a number of folks in the community that asked if I would consider running for mayor because they wanted someone with business experience managing definitely the city and the financial end of the city because they didn't feel like we're preparing ourselves for growth. And there's a number of issues that are facing us that have just not been addressed in the last 6 years, which is why both Bob and Terry have endorsed me. Namely, it's preparing our roads for growth. We're expected to have another 200,000 people join us as residents in the next 20 to 25 years. And there simply is no road plan to move people around the city faster. That's going to be a concern for all of us. I mean, I'm sure we've all seen in the last several years that it takes anywhere from, you know, 30 to 35 minutes to get around town, where it took 10 minutes, 4 years ago. Of course, a lot of that's traffic, new residents driven and tourists, but we need to have a comprehensive transportation plan in place, or we're all going to be sitting in a parking lot in 5 to 7 years. Something else I'm focused on, Ayush, is investing in our infrastructure, which has been woefully neglected over the last 6 years. We're losing about $4 million a year in water revenue and a total of $20 million in the last 6 years because the city has failed to put aside money to maintain our water pipes, which is why our water rates are among the highest in Northwest Arkansas. That's something that strong professionally led cities don't have an issue with. And we're at 50% water loss. The national average is at 16%, and that's the water loss average that Bob McCaslin had when he was in office. So it's not previous administrations. It's just simply not taking care of our city. Finally, I'm focused on providing support, increased support significantly for affordable housing for young adults and our workforce employees. Currently, it's very difficult for home builders to build in Bentonville, and a lot of these builders, and I've talked to over 2 dozen of them, have shifted their projects outside of the Bentonville area. Our neighboring cities have no problem building homes that are under $500,000, but for some reason we do. That's a problem 2 times for Bentonville. One, these folks all live outside the city limits, but they're commuting into Bentonville to work, which is making our traffic horrendous. Also, because they're living outside the city of Bentonville limits, they're not paying into our infrastructure. They're not buying their groceries here. They're buying them in Pea Ridge or Decatur or Lowell, which is a problem for us because we need sales tax dollars to fund operations. So I'm focused on leading Bentonville with a business-minded approach to run the city more like a business so we can take investments and invest them in the most pressing needs for the city so we're prepared for growth. Someone shared with me a while back an analogy, which I love. You don't invest in wants like you invest in your home. If you've got a hole in the roof, you don't invest money screening in your back porch. So I'm interested in putting common sense back into city government and less bureaucracy.